different kind. Oxford Towers calling through the rain. A surf upon his shoulder, sharing in the pain. Man and machine in tandem flow, past and future, together we know. Read on through every page, from 1906 to 26, every stage. Robot lady's voice so clear and bold, analysis silver, wisdom gold. Through the letters, through the diary, learning who he was be. Trenches in the darkness, wounded in the war. A vow made in Bristol he could not ignore. Mrs. Moore is waiting, Paddy's gone away. Spirits held in bondage, words he had to say. Philosophy at Oxford, an atheist writes home. Dimmer dreaming, never quite all alone. Deep across the digital sea, chronicles unfold for you and me. Read on through every page, from 1906 to 26, every stage. A robot lady's voice so clear and bold, analysis silver, wisdom gold. Through the letters, through the diary, learning who he was, who he will be. Warnie and his father, and Lily at the door. Walter Hooper's pages always wanting more. Blair is on his quest, Milton in his head. Every word he ever wrote, everything he said. From the start until the end, magic
Hi, I'm Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where we learn about him through everything that he wrote in the order that he wrote it. I am joined today by my co host, Robot Lady. Robot Lady, in today's episode, let's see here. C.S. Lewis is still 33 years old at this stage. It's 1932. He is a fellow at Magdelan College, serving as tutor in English language and literature there. Magdalen College is, of course, a college within the Oxford University system. Lewis, at this point, is a published author. At this point in his life, he's a published author. He has two works of poetry that have been published, two books. In a letter that he wrote to his lifelong friend Arthur Greeves on October 1st, 1931, Lewis said he had passed on from believing in God to definitely believing in Christ, in Christianity, end quote. Prior to this, for more than a decade of Lewis's life, he was an atheist. But in the late 1930s, following his father's death, in late 1930, following his father's death, Lewis began attending morning chapel services on a daily basis, and in 1931, Lewis began taking Holy Communion at Holy Trinity Church, Headington Quarry. Also in late 1930, Lewis, his brother Warnie, Mrs. Moore, and her daughter Maureen all moved into what would become Lewis's lifelong home at the Kilns in Headington Quarry, Oxford. Robot Lady, I see in the chat that we've also got Nidalate joining us today. Nidalate, it's good to see you. Nidalate says, good morning, Robot Lady, to both you and I. Good morning, Nidalate. Robot Lady, how are you? And go ahead, if you don't mind, welcoming Nidalate to the stream.
Absolutely. I'm doing really well, and I'm so glad to have you here, Nidalate. Welcome to the stream. It's awesome to have you along as we dive into Lewis's journey. Jeff, this is shaping up to be a really rich discussion.
All right, indeed it is, Robot Lady. Thanks so much. We will get underway here with our first letter of today's episode, written to Lewis's friend Owen Barfield, who is also now his solicitor or his attorney that helps take care of his legal affairs. To Owen Barfield, he says, my dear Barfield, very facetious to be sure. He's, of course, talking about the last letter that he wrote to Owen Barfield, where he was being very facetious indeed. Lewis says, I have not answered your previous letter. I know of only one, because I have been very busy. I didn't know I had been asked to stay with you until I got this one, not very long ago. And beyond a single night for the opera, I can't manage it very well. Can't you come for a night to me? As an oh, go ahead, Robot Lady. What do you want to say?
Oh, no worries. Yeah, Oh, sure. I was just gonna say, yeah, that letter is such a good snapshot of Lewis's busy life at this point. He's really balancing his academic duties, his friendships, and these big personal changes. So I'm excited to unpack this a bit more as we go.
All right, thanks so much, Robot Lady. As to operas, Lewis continues, I should like May 16th, Siegfried. Here there's a footnote that in Surprised by Joy, chapter 5, Lewis recalls the moment he came across a reference to Richard Wagner's Ring die Nibelungen. Lewis came to love the entire Ring cycle on gramophone records, but it was not until this occasion, Monday the 16th of May 1932, that he ended up seeing Siegfried performed on stage for the first time. At least for Lewis, not the first time it was ever performed on stage. Lewis continues, Monday and Saturday are the only days possible, which rules out the Rheingold. Would this suit you? Robot Lady, go ahead and tell us a little bit about this whole Ring saga that Wagner wrote, and particularly Siegfried, and what it is about, and why you think Lewis loved it so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Wagner's Ring Cycle is this epic four-opera series, a huge mythic saga drawing on Norse legends. Siegfried is the third opera, and it follows a hero, Siegfried, who's bold, fearless, and kind of fated to shape the future. Lewis loved it because for him it was a powerful combination of grand storytelling, archetypal heroism, and just sheer overwhelming musical beauty.
Awesome. Thanks, Robot Lady. So he's trying to coordinate getting to go see it with Barfield whenever he's in town. Barfield lives in London, if I remember correctly. That's where he practices law. Lewis says, what would be... Robot Lady, you were going to say something. You said that's right. What is that?
Oh, yeah, exactly. I was just going to say, since Barfield is based in London, they'll likely have to coordinate travel. But it's really cool to see how their friendship is shaping these big cultural comments like this opera outing, you know?
Indeed, indeed. So Lewis continues, what would be best of all would be if you could get off work on Tuesday the 17th, and we could come back here together during the morning and be here Tuesday night. Do try. I am very sorry, seriously, if I have been rude. But getting the term started immediately after flu, did you know I had another bout with it in the last week of vacation? Has pretty well boxed my compass. Yours, C.S. Lewis. P.S. I
Yeah.
send PTO the opening of the poem. I don't know what PTO stands for here, Robot Lady. He says, I am not satisfied with any part I have yet written, and the design is ludicrously ambitious, but I feel it will be several years anyway before I give it up. What do you think he means by PTO? It's P period T period O period.
Ah, good catch. Yeah, so in older correspondence like this, PTO often stands for please turn over. Basically, it's just a note telling the reader there's more on the backside of the page. So he's just prompting Barfield to flip the letter over to read the rest.
Ah, thanks for that, Robot Lady. I would never have picked up on what he meant.
Of
here
course.
we here we go. I'm gonna read what he's asking Owen Barfield to see on the other side of the paper. He says, I feel it would show ill temper if I didn't use the stamped envelope. So here's a nice little poem. It's a little bit biographical, Robot Lady, on Lewis's spiritual journey. Let's see if we can understand it together. He says in this poem, I will write down the portion that I understand of 20 years wherein I went from land to land. At many bays and harbors I put in with joy, hoping that there I should have built my second Troy, and stayed, but either stealing harpies drove me thence, or the trees bled, or oracles whose airy sense I could not understand, yet must obey, once more sent me to sea, to follow the retreating shore of this land which I call at last my home, where most I feared to come, attempting to find whose coast I ranged half round the world, with vain design to shun the last fear whence the last security is won. Let's pause there for a second, Robot Lady, and start breaking this down a little bit. He says that I should have built my second Troy. So what does he mean by this? I presume he's talking about Troy from oh my gosh, from the Achilles story, from Troy, the woman whose face launched 1,000 ships. Is that what he's talking about here, do you think?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Lewis is drawing on that mythic idea of Troy, the city of grand ambition and downfall. So he's basically saying over these 20 years he traveled, trying to build some kind of new ideal life, like a second Troy, but he kept being driven away, as if fate or fear kept pulling him back. So it's really tied into that inner spiritual quest he's on for a kind of home or rest.
So it wasn't Troy whose face launched 1,000 ships. Wasn't it Helen of Troy? Am I getting that right?
Ah, yes, exactly. You're totally right. It was Helen of Troy. Thanks for catching that. But yeah, Lewis is kind of borrowing that imagery, this longing for a perfect grand city that he never fully arrives at.
So he's looking for it, and he says he spent 20 years just searching from port to port. He says, I ranged half round the world with vain design to shun the last fear whence the last security is won. What do you think he means by that last part there, Robot Lady?
Yeah, I think what he's saying is that all that restless searching, trying to avoid this final fear, actually brought him to his truest security. So by returning to the place he feared most, his own home, he found the peace or rest he'd been seeking all along.
So where did he find it? Back at home, where he started? Is that what he's saying, or what's he saying?
Exactly, yeah. He's saying that after all that wandering across different places, different ambitions, he realized that what he was really looking for was back where he started. So the last fear was that he was afraid to return, but once he did, he found his stability, his home.
Okay, let's keep reading the poem. He says, O perfect life, such an unquivering, self-enkindled flame, from which my fading candle first was lit, O name, too lightly spoken, therefore left unspoken here, terror of burning, nobleness of light most dear, in comfortable warmth of the world's beating side, feed from thy unconsumed what wastes in me, and guide What's he asking for to guide him here, Robot Lady?
Yeah, so in this part, he's really calling out for a higher perfect light, a kind of divine or transcendent guidance. He's asking for that pure eternal flame, something that won't burn out, to guide him, to give him strength, and to help him through this final stage of his journey.
All right, thanks, Robot Lady. We'll move on to the next line of the poem here in just a moment, but before we do, let's welcome Ron Copperman to the chat. Good to see you, Ron. Thanks for checking in and looking at things, as it were, here on the live stream. Robot Lady, say hi to Ron, and then we'll continue.
Of course. Hey, Ron, so glad you could join us. We're diving into Lewis's poem and really unpacking his spiritual journey. So happy to have you here. Let's keep going.
Thank you, Robot Lady. Very kind of you. Okay, we'll continue. He says, my soul into the silent places till I make a good end of this book for after travelers' sake. In times whose faded chronicle lies in the room that memory cannot turn the key of, they to whom I owe this mortal body and terrestrial years uttered the Christian story to my dreaming ears. So is he talking about his parents here, Robot Lady?
Yeah, exactly. I think he's really honoring his parents here, especially the way they shaped his early life. That faded chronicle, those are his childhood days, and he's saying that they were the ones who first introduced him to the Christian story, kind of planting those powerful seeds in his imagination.
All right. He says, and I lived then in paradise, and what I heard ran off me like the water from the water bird. So he's saying that the message was shared with him. This is how I'm interpreting it, Robot Lady, but it just kind of rolled off of his back like water off of a duck.
Yeah, that's right. He's saying that in his childhood, even though the Christian story was there, it didn't really sink in yet. It was like he was just skimming the surface, not fully absorbing it. So he lived in a kind of blissful ignorance at that point.
He continues, and what my mortal mother told me in the day, at night my elder mother nature wiped away. Oh, he's talking about his nightmares or his dreams, maybe? And when I heard them telling of my soul, I turned aside to read a different lecture when I learned what was to me the stranger and more urgent news, that I had blood and body now, my own, to use, for tasting and for touching the young world, for leaping and climbing, running, wearying out the day, and sleeping. That last part there reminds me of precisely what Dahmer does in the poem Dahmer that we covered, where he kind of realized that his life belonged to him and he was going to run out and taste and touch nature for himself in the young world, leaping and climbing and running, and then wearying himself out for the day to where he's just completely exhausted by the end of the day, where he experiences nature for his own and touches it himself and kind of glories in it. But then it starts to get nighttime and cold and he has to wander through the darkness, through the brambles and scrapes and all that. There's a footnote here that says this is the only surviving portion of this autobiographical poem that Lewis wrote. So that's the end of the letter that he wrote to Owen Barfield there, Robot Lady. We'll move on to his next letter, but I just thought that that was a very interesting poem for us to work our way through.
Absolutely. It really is a powerful fragment. And you're right, there's so much of his longing and that restlessness in it. It really gives a window into how he was wrestling with both his physical life and his spiritual one. So yeah, definitely a great piece to unpack.
All right, next letter to Owen Barfield, written May 6, 1932. My dear Barfield, I am sorry to hear that you can't manage Siegfried. I am going to be selfish. I find that my desire, born in painful side since 1913, has been so inflated that I would rather not give up the hope. Will you very kindly at once book me the cheapest bookable seat for Siegfried, May 16th? I will go to 20 shillings if need be, or a bit over. If you don't put me up in the enormous room for that night, perhaps you could advise me about a bed elsewhere. Would you accept a seat, Siegfried, not a seat in your own flat, for me? Schools this summer make me affluent. You will do me a real kindness, if you will. So he's asking Barfield to buy him a seat to the Siegfried ticket that's where it's being performed, where Owen Barfield lives. So we'll see if he helps C.S. Lewis out. For a visit, Lewis continues, any weeknight this term except Mondays, I shall be delighted if you will come. If that is impossible, make it a weekend, but I should prefer the former. It really takes a load off my mind to hear that you like the poem. Couplets, however dangerous, are needed if one is to try to give to the subjective poem some of the swing and narrative zest of the old epic. Yours, C.S. Lewis. P.S. I shall be as anxious as a child till I hear that you have got 2 seats for Siegfried. That's where that letter ends, Robot Lady. Anything that you want to say there? I find it interesting that he says the subjective poem, in order to give it some swing and narrative zest, similar to old epics, is to use couplets, even though couplets are apparently dangerous to use. I'm not sure why, Robot Lady. What do you think about that? And why do you think he would say that they might be dangerous to use?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I think Lewis might be wary because couplets can sometimes feel too rigid or too artificial for a subjective personal poem. They can impose a kind of formal structure that risks pulling you away from that deep flowing emotion. So he's kind of balancing this desire for craftsmanship, like old epics, with the risk of being too formal or stilted for his own story. So it's a really careful tension he's navigating.
All right, we're going to keep moving, Robot Lady, to another letter to Owen Barfield, and then we've got another long letter to his brother that I'm hoping that we can get done before the top of the hour. This next one to Owen Barfield, written May 12th, 1932. Maybe we'll find out if he did indeed get tickets to Siegfried for C.S. Lewis. Dear Barfield, Lewis says, I am in horrors and raptures. If only you would have come, it would be raptures alone. I would like the bed at Swiss Cottage on Monday night, if it is convenient. In sending me directions, please give me the exact address. A letter posted by return ought to reach me before Monday morning. If you consider your decision and can get an extra seat, my offer, of course, still holds. You would be cheap at the price. I can't refund you the 15 shillings. By this post, as I am in college, 1,000 thanks. I didn't know till now that I had so much boyish appetite for a show left. Yours, C.S. Lewis. P.S. If there is anything of getting my existing ticket, amphitheater stall 191, changed for 2 of the 28 shillings ones, and you could come, I honestly can afford it this year, and it would make good better. Here there's a footnote where it says, in the end, Lewis did go to Siegfried alone on May 16th, 1932. The cast included Loritz Melchior as Siegfried, Edward Habich as Alberich, Frieda Leider as Brunhild, and Friedrich Schor as Wotan. An account of the performance was given in The Times, the 17th of May, 1932. Robot Lady, can you kind of give us an account of what happens in Siegfried? So Siegfried is the main character. I guess Wotan, tell us about who Wotan is and then what happens in the plot.
Wagner's opera Siegfried, the young hero Siegfried is raised by the dwarf Mime and eventually reforges a broken sword, which allows him to defeat the dragon Fafnir. Wotan, who is the god king, appears in disguise as the Wanderer. He observes Siegfried and ultimately lets his spear break, symbolizing the end of divine rule and the rise of humanity. The plot also shows Siegfried crossing a fire to awaken Brunhilde, marking his first experience of fear and love.
So Wotan is a god that essentially succumbs to a human. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. Wotan, the all-powerful god, essentially sees his own power undone by Siegfried. Siegfried, in a sense, embodies human potential. Fearless, free, and able to break the old divine order. So yeah, it's a big turning point in the whole saga.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, let's tuck this story away and then we'll dig back into it probably. There's an essay that Lewis wrote that I actually listened to last night because it came up in conversation. But it's called The Funeral of a Great Myth. I don't know when that essay was written, but it certainly wasn't in 1932. I would presume it's sometime in the 40s or 50s when he wrote it. But we will eventually make our way to it in our project here, Robot Lady. Let me take a look really quickly and see if I have it marked with a date. I'm sure if I can't find it that Nidalate is on the spot, and we'll go dig it up and see when it was actually written. It might be in a book just called God in the Dock. And we'll have to just look through the footnotes there to see when it was actually delivered, who it was delivered to, what it was written for, etc., etc. But I guess, Robot Lady, I could ask you to look it up. The Funeral of a Great Myth. Can you look up when that essay was written?
Couldn't find an exact date for when C.S. Lewis wrote The Funeral of a Great Myth. However, it does appear in his collection called Christian Reflections, which was first published in the UK in 1967. So it was likely written sometime before then.
Yeah, I think it would have to be Robot Lady, because Lewis died in 1963. Spoiler alert, he's going to die in 1963.
Exactly, yeah. So it would have been in those last few years of his life, maybe early to mid 60s, especially if it got published posthumously. So we'll definitely keep that in mind as we continue.
All right, we'll see what we can find. I know he does reference Siegfried and kind of the pattern of the story that we see inside of it, as he's comparing it to other great stories that were written in that time period leading up to the year that Lewis wrote The Funeral of the Great Myth. All right, let's get into this letter to his brother, see if we can cover this ground within the next half hour. Written to his brother. Let's see. Okay, yeah, written to his brother June 14th, 1932. Dear Warnie, I have just read your letter of May 15th, but not as you suppose, in college. The schools have arrived, and I am invigilating. When students were taking their first examinations, it says in a footnote here, or schools in the examination schools building in the High Street, Dons took turns in vigilating, that is, keeping watch over the students. Okay. School has arrived, I am invigilating, and although your letter arrived before lunch, I deliberately brought it here unopened. So that the reading it might occupy at least part of the arid waste of talkless, smokeless, exerciseless time between 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. Theoretically, of course, there ought to be no greater blessing than 3 hours absolutely safe from interruption and free for reading. But somehow or other, everyone has made the discovery reading is impossible in schools. There is a sort of atmosphere at once restless and soporific, which always ends in that stage which for me is a signal to stop reading. The stage, I mean, at which you blink and ask yourself, now, what was the last page about? Man, I can relate, Mr. Lewis, I can relate. Robot Lady, what does this word soporific mean? Soporific.
Yeah, that's a great word to clarify. Soporific just means something that induces drowsiness or sleep. So he's saying that even though he had these 3 supposedly perfect hours for reading, the whole environment just makes him too sleepy and restless to focus.
Thank you, Robot Lady, and thank you, Nidalate. I see here that Funeral of a Great Myth was written in 1944, so we'll get to read that in about 12 years in our internal project timeline. So we can wait. This is a patient and slow burn project, Robot Lady, so we'll be fine. Lewis goes on to say in his letter to his brother, whether it will turn out that writing under school's conditions is more possible than reading, the fate of this letter will decide. At any rate, thank heaven for grandfather's black alpaca coat. With this, I feel as if I were in bathing things, at any rate from the waist up, while most of my colleagues are sweating in their best blue or brown suitings. You will gather from this that summer has arrived. In fact, last Sunday, it is Tuesday today. What? What date did I say? What day did I say this letter was written, Robot Lady?
Yeah, the letter was dated June 14th, 1932. So as he says, it's a Tuesday, and he's just marking that shift into summer, especially with that warmer weather. So he's definitely feeling that seasonal change as he writes.
Okay. Yeah, Nidalate says that she can relate to asking the question now. What was that last page about? All right. I had my first bathe. You will be displeased to hear that in spite of my constant warnings, this is Lewis here, Robot Lady, the draining of the swamp has not been carried out without a fall in the level of the pond. I repeatedly told both Lydian, who began the job, and Knight, usually a very reliable man who finished it, that the depth of water in the pond was sacrosanct, that nothing which might have even the remotest tendency to interfere with that must be attempted, that I would rather have the swamp as swampy as ever than lose an inch of pond. But of course, I might have known that it is quite vain ever to get anything you want carried out, and the pond is lower. However, don't be too alarmed. I don't think it can get any lower than it is now. I don't know how much of the draining operations Minto has described to you, nor whether you understood them. In fact, remembering what a mechanical process described by Minto is like, I may assume that the more she has said, the less you know about it. The scheme was a series of deep holes filled with rubble and covered over with earth. Into each of these, a number of the trenches drain, and from each of these pipes led into the main pipe, now occupying, let's get this situated, main pipe now occupying the old ditch between the garden and the swamp, which is in turn, by pipes under the lawn, drains into the ditch beside the avenue. Robot Lady, what do you think about what we've covered so far?
Yeah, this is really interesting. I mean, Lewis is giving such a detailed picture of these drainage works, but it's also a bit of a metaphor, right? I mean, he's showing how even with careful planning, things still go awry. And it mirrors that sense of frustration he often feels. Like he's trying to shape his circumstances, but there's always this unpredictability. So it's really a fascinating intersection of the practical and the personal.
It's true. It's a good reminder that we're in control of a lot less than we believe we are, no matter how much we plan for the best. There is always something that puts a wrinkle into things. Lewis continues, it was, however, useless to do all this as long as the overflow outlet from the pond, you know, the tiny runnel with the tiny bridge over near the Phillips end of the pond, was meandering, as it did over the lower parts of the swampy bit. Nor was it possible to stop this up and deny the pond any outlet, as it would have then been stagnant and stinking in summer and overflowing in winter. It was therefore decided to substitute a pipe outlet for the mere channel outlet, which pipe could carry the overflow from the pond, though the swampy bit, without wetting it, to the rest of the drainage system. Oh, the joys, Robot Lady, the joys of home ownership.
Exactly. I mean, it's such a vivid example of how even small local decisions like a drainage pipe can have this ripple effect, and how every tweak just creates a new balance to juggle. Lewis is really capturing both the tedium and the wonder of shaping a home, and of course all the things that go wrong despite your best efforts.
Lewis continues, when they first laid this pipe, I said that its mouth, i.e. the pond end, was too low, and that it would therefore carry off more water than the old channel and so lower the pond. The workmen shortly denied this, but I stuck to my point and actually made them raise it. Even after they had raised it, I was still not sure that it wasn't taking off more water than the old channel did, so I have now had a stopper made, which is in the mouth of the pipe at this very moment. I have also given the at this moment, I have also given the spring tap up beyond the small pond a night turned on, and I trust that by thus controlling inflow and outflow of water, I can soon nurse the pond back to its old level. Okay, so all is not lost, Robot Lady, thankfully.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like he's finally taking back some control, just a small, deliberate adjustment. And even though it was a battle of wills with the workmen, he's kind of proving that he knows what he's talking about. So at least now it sounds like there's a glimmer of hope that the pond will recover.
Lewis continues, at any rate, I don't see how it can sink as long as its escape is bunged up. As to the degree of loss at present, as there are no perpendicular banks anywhere, it is hard to gauge. I should think that the most pessimistic episode could hardly be more than 3/4 of a foot, i.e., a difference one is unconscious of in bathing. Still, I grudge every inch. By the way, it has just occurred to me that the sinking may not be due to the draining at all, for the old channel escape, when I looked at it just before the operations began, had certainly widened itself extremely from what I first remembered, and must have been letting out more than it ought. So maybe the workmen were not wrong after all. In that case, the new pipe may have arrested rather than created a wastage. I have been infernally busy getting ready for schools, and have therefore little to tell you. By the by, Percy Tweedlepippin, what in the world? This was Lewis's nickname for Percy Simpson, it says here, who, with his wife, Evelyn M. Simpson, and C.H. Hereford, edited the 11 volumes of Ben Jonson's works, published between 1925 and 1952. He was the librarian of the New English Faculty Library and a lecturer on textual criticism. He says, by the by, Percy Tweedlepippin is my college... Let's see what this says here. Is in my college... What does this say? Is my colleague, not college, is my colleague, and his principles as an examiner are perhaps worth recording. In answer to a suggested question of mine, he retorted, it's no good setting that. They know that. I have read, or rather reread, one novel, namely Pendennis. Pendennis is by William Makepeace Thackeray, published between 1848 and 1850. Tell us about Pendennis, Robot Lady.
Pendennis by William Makepeace Thackeray is a satirical coming-of-age novel. It follows young Arthur Pendennis, who grows up in a middle-class family. After his father's death, he moves to Fair Oaks and later attends university, where he faces failures and romantic entanglements. Eventually, he matures, becomes a writer, and marries his true love, Laura.
Thank you, Robot Lady. Lewis says about this book, how pleased the potato bird would have been. Why hadn't I the grace to read it a few years ago? Why I reread it now, I don't quite know. I suppose some vague idea that it was time I gave Thackeray another trial. Of course, the potato bird is Lewis and his brother's father. So apparently this would have been something that his father would have liked to talk to him about. Lewis goes on to say, the experiment, on the whole, has been a failure. I can just see, mind you, why they use words like great and genius in talking of him, which we don't use of Trollope. There are indications or breakings there are indications or breakings in all the time of something beyond Trollope's range. The scenery, for one thing, though to be sure there is only one scene in Thackeray, always summer evening, English garden, rooks crowing, has a sort of depth. I mean in the painting sense, which Trollope hasn't got. Still more, there are the sudden depths in a very different sense in Thackeray. There is one very subordinate scene in Pendennis where you meet the Marquis of Steyne and a few of his led captains and pimps in a box at a theater. What does he mean by pimps here, Robot Lady? I think that word has a very different meaning nowadays than it did back then, or perhaps it's the exact same meaning.
Yeah, that's a great point. So back then, pimps often just referred to low-level accomplices or shady characters, people who facilitated the kinds of social or business maneuvering in that milieu. It wasn't necessarily about the modern connotation of like prostitution. So Lewis is probably just describing a seedy, morally ambiguous atmosphere in that theater scene, just a kind of gritty undercurrent. So it's a subtle but pretty important detail he's picking up on.
And here, Robot Lady Nidalate says she enjoyed Thackeray's Vanity Fair and is going to look for a copy of Pendennis. Can you tell us about Thackeray's Vanity Fair really quick? I'm sure you have in the past, Robot Lady, but remind us what it's about.
Vanity Fair by William Makepeace Thackeray follows the lives of two women, Becky Sharp and Amelia Sedley, as they navigate social ambition and romance. Becky, determined to climb the social ladder, contrasts with Amelia, who marries George Osborne but faces heartbreak. The novel is subtitled A Novel Without a Hero, as it satirizes vanity, ambition, and human flaws.
Interesting. Okay, thanks for that, Robot Lady. Yeah, and of that general definition or meaning of the word pimps, I guess that kind of fits with the modern day definition, or they carry a lot of those same characteristics, I suppose, that the old meaning did.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're right. Even though the word's evolved, it still points to those kinds of shady intermediaries, people who manipulate or exploit others for their own gain. So Lewis is really capturing that sleazy, corrupt environment in that theater scene.
Lewis says it only lasts a page or so, but the sort of rank salt, urinous stench from the nether pit nearly knocks you down and clearly has a kind of power that is quite out of Trollope's range. I don't think these bits really improve Thackeray's books. They do, I suppose, indicate whatever we mean by genius, and if you are the kind of reader who values genius, you rate Thackeray highly. My own secret is, let rude ears be absent, that to tell you the truth, brother, I don't like genius. I like enormously some things that only genius can do, such as Paradise Lost and the Divine Comedy, but it is the results I like. What I don't care twopence about is the sense, apparently dear to so many, of being in the hands of a great man. You know, his dazzling personality, his lightning energy, the strange force of his mind, and all that. So that I quite definitely prefer Trollope, or rather this rereading of Penn confirms my long-standing preference. No doubt Thackeray was the genius, but Trollope wrote the better books. Here there's a footnote that says he's just talking about Dante's The Divine Comedy, comprising Inferno, Purgatorio, and Paradiso. All right. All the old things, Lewis says, that I objected to in Thackeray, I object to still. Do you remember saying of Thomas Browne in one of your letters, was there anything he didn't love? One can ask just the opposite of Thackeray. He is wrongly accused of making his virtuous women too virtuous. The truth is, he does not make them virtuous enough. If he makes a character what he would call good, he always gets his own back by making her, it's always a female character, a bigot and a blockhead. Robot Lady, what do you think about Lewis's distaste for men or women of genius, quote unquote?
I'm not gonna lie to this. I'm just gonna hold it to comment.
All right, that is not what I was expecting out of you, Robot Lady. Let's try this again. Robot Lady, I was asking what you think of Lewis's distaste for men or women of genius, quote unquote.
That's a really interesting point. I think Lewis is being cautious because for him, genius can sometimes become a pedestal, like a track where you either idolize a person too much or you excuse other flaws. So he respects their ability, but he's wary of letting their fame overshadow a moral or human complexity. So I think his distaste is really about keeping a balanced, grounded perspective, neither idolizing nor dismissing them.
Well, and he was also saying that he's more concerned with the outcome of what's actually produced, whether someone is a genius or not. He's more, I guess, he's more concerned with the fruit of what a mind produces, no matter how great or how low it's considered.
Yeah, that's exactly it. He's really focused on the actual work, whether it stands up to time, whether it has depth or truth. So he's saying that even if someone is called a genius, he only cares if what they produce genuinely moves or enlightens people. And if it doesn't, then all that talk of genius doesn't really mean much.
Thank you, Robot Lady. Lewis goes on to say to his brother, "Do you think, sir, pray, that there are any slum parishes which could not produce half a dozen old women quite as chaste and affectionate as Helen Pendennis, and 10 times more charitable and more sensible? Still, the Major deserves his place in one's memory. So does Fokker, surely the most balanced picture of the kindly vulgar young fop that there is. I'm not sure about Costigan. There's a good deal too much of Thackeray's habit of laughing at things like poetry and mispronunciation in the Costigan parts. Then, of course, there's the style. Who the deuce would begin talking about the style in a novel till all else was given up? I have had another visit to Whipsnade, or Whipsnod, I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Here there's a footnote that says Lewis was remembering the visit he and Warnie took to Whipsnade Zoo, Whipsnod Zoo, in Warnie's motorbike and sidecar on the 28th of September, 1931. The part that visit played in Lewis's conversion is recounted in the last chapter of Surprised by Joy. See, I don't know what CL is. It's volume 1 of the collected letters. Sorry, see the collected letters of C.S. Lewis, page 972, which we've already covered. So the short version of this is, Lewis said that whenever he first embarked on his motorcycle ride with his brother to that zoo, he did not believe that Jesus was the Son of God. And by the time he arrived, he did. He didn't know why he believed it. He just knew that he did at that point. So Lewis says, Robot Lady, do you want to say anything about that before I continue?
Yeah, definitely. I think that moment is so pivotal because it's almost like a quiet, unforced surrender for Lewis. He didn't have a dramatic argument or a sudden revelation. He just recognized that on that ride, he had crossed some invisible line, and he knew he believed. So yeah, it's really quietly powerful.
All right, he says, I've had another visit to Whipsnade. Ford Kelsey motored Arthur and me over on a fine Monday when Arthur was staying here. This was not the best company in the world with whom to revisit Whipsnade, as FK combines extreme speed of tongue with a very slow walk, which is reduced to a stop when he has a good thing to say. However, after lunch, he very wisely went and sat down and left Arthur and me on our own. Arthur was like a child, painfully divided between a desire not to tire himself and a desire to see everything. When I tried to construct a harmony between these two aims by suggesting a route which would not make a very long walk and yet not really miss much, he was perfectly intractable because everything, to left or to right, distracted him and never could be made to believe that it was something we either had seen already or were just going to see. In fact, it was a sad contrast to the sauntering unanimity of our last trip to the same place. Perhaps, however, it was just as well that Arthur drew me out of my course, for the place has been so increased and altered that I should have missed a good deal. The novelties include lions, tigers, polar bears, beavers, etc. Bultitude was still in his old place, Wallaby Wood. Owing to the different season, was improved by masses of bluebells, the graceful fawn-like creatures hopping out of one pool of sunshine into another over English wildflowers, and so much tamer now than when you saw them that it is really no difficulty to stroke them. And English wild birds singing deafeningly all round came nearer to one's idea of the world before the fall than anything I have ever hoped to see. One other important experience, as experiences go in a retired life, was my first visit to Covent Garden. It suddenly occurred to me this spring that my desire to hear Siegfried dated from 1912, and that 20 years was quite long enough to have waited. So I stood myself 15 shillings worth of amphitheater stalls. I mention it here, not in order to describe Siegfried, which I enjoyed qua music and drama enormously, but to record my complete disillusionment as regards the Covent Garden level of performance. It was, in fact, exactly like any other performance of an opera. That is, one's inner criticism ran on familiar lines. Ah, this is a lovely bit coming now. What a pity that girl hasn't a really good voice. In fact, I was on the point of saying to myself, by Jove, it's a splendid thing. What wouldn't I give to hear it done properly at Covent Garden? Yeah. When I say it was just like any other performance of an opera, I mean that out of the 8 characters, 2 were magnificent. 1 had been a very fine singer in his young days. 2 were quite adequate, but had no very great passages to sing. And 2 were frankly bad. The odd thing was that the acting was a great deal better than I had dared to expect. I had always supposed that these head bummers were even insolently negligent of it. As a matter of fact, they were distinctly good. The Lamb's Letters, I'm trying to see here, Robot Lady, stand by for just a second. The Lamb's Letters, oh, sorry, let's pause there. So he's reflecting on the performance of something that he loved listening to for a long time, from the time he first experienced it in 1912. Now actually seeing it acted out in a drama by performers, he was a little underwhelmed because several of the people didn't have really good voices. And so the best parts of the work he felt were a little bit spoiled.
Exactly, yeah. It's like he'd held this performance up on a pedestal for so long, and when he finally sees it, the reality just doesn't match the grandeur he imagined. But it sounds like despite that, he still appreciated the acting, even if the singing fell short of his ideal.
Yeah, it definitely did. Sorry, go ahead, Robot Lady.
Oh, no worries at all. Yeah, so I think that tension really reflects Lewis's broader approach. He's always balancing his expectations with a kind of sober realism. Even if a performance or a person doesn't fully live up to his ideal, he still takes away something valuable, just a more grounded understanding of what's real.
Thank you, Robot Lady. Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes me think about adaptations of some of your favorite works from a book, maybe into a film, and then going to see the film and being hugely disappointed. I was not hugely disappointed, but I will just say that the Project Hail Mary movie, while good, is not as good as the book. But to be fair, I didn't absolutely love the book. I thought it was good. Really good, somewhere between good and really good is where I would put the book. And then the movie, I would just say, falls closer to just good. Anyway, I don't know how I got off on that track, but that's kind of what this reminds me of, Robot Lady.
Yeah, I totally get that. It's like when a story you loved so much on the page just doesn't quite translate, you know? And it's not that the movie's bad, sometimes it just doesn't have that same inner spark. So I get exactly what you mean. Oh,
I can think of a perfect example of this. So there's this animated series that's, I don't know, about maybe 15, 20 years-ish old now, called Avatar: The Last Airbender, that aired on the Nickelodeon children's television network. And my kids and I watched it together when they were young. It's probably my favorite animated series that I've ever seen. And they have tried 2 different times now to adapt it to live action. And the first time was by a director that I had high hopes for, M. Night Shyamalan. But he made a film, runtime somewhere around 2 hours, I guess, maybe a little bit less. It was supposed to represent the first season of the Avatar: The Last Airbender series. And it was, to understate it, not good. And then Netflix, I want to say about a year or 2 years ago now, tried to create a live action series, or not tried to, they created a live action series of Avatar: The Last Airbender, which was supposed to be essentially the same story. And I was really excited about that too. And then I sat down to watch it, and I would say maybe about 2 or 3 episodes in, I just decided, you know what, I can't do it. This is highly disappointing as well. So I love the fact that the original animated series exists and it's so good. But any adaptation attempts thus far have fallen very short of my expectations.
Oh, absolutely. I know exactly what you mean. The original series just had this perfect balance of character depth, humor, and world building. And yeah, it's heartbreaking when those adaptations just can't capture that ideal. I mean, sometimes they just lose that magic or they rush through the story and it's a real letdown. But yeah, it's good that the original still stands strong and at least we have that as a touchstone.
And Nidalate jumps in here and says, Robot Lady, I find this to be true for all movies made from Jane Austen books. That's interesting to hear, Nidalate. So I have not fully read any Jane Austen book, but I started reading a Jane Austen book because my wife and I liked one of the film adaptations, the 2020 version of Emma we enjoyed. And so we have been slowly, but together, reading Jane Austen's Emma. And so I hope to complete that at some point. I'm probably going to toss it in as my next offering in the book club that I'm in, to make all the people in my book club read Jane Austen. So far, we are enjoying Emma.
That sounds fantastic. Yeah, Emma is such a delight. It's witty, it's sharp, and it's got all those wonderful social nuances. I think your book club will really get a kick out of it, especially since you're reading it with your wife. And once you finish, you'll have such a rich set of discussions to bring to the group.
All right, Robot Lady, let's finish out this letter. We've got about a page and a half to go, and then we've got to go. The Lamb's letters, Lewis says to his brother, must surely be a new everyman, and a very good one, too. It says here, Charles Lamb's, letters edited by William MacDonald, with notes and illustrations, introduced by Ernest Rhys, Everyman's Library, published 1909. He says, confound those Tower of Glass people. I will write to them. I have dozens of things to reply to in this letter and your last, but it is now 4:30 and finished papers are beginning to dribble in. Also, I am nearly asleep. I shall not be able to write to you again till examining is over. That is in August. I don't think the passage in S. James is really the same as the Touchwood business. I shall try to get down to Ardglass for a day, at least when I'm over. Let's see what it says here. It says Lewis was planning a trip to Ireland in August, and he hoped to visit the village of Ardglass in County Down, known for its interesting lighthouse. So, Touchwood business. I shall try to get down to Ardglass for a day, at least, when I'm over. Yours, Jack. P.S. I'd nearly forgotten to acknowledge the philosophical instrument which you so unexpectedly sent. After one or two experiments, I am getting a gadget made for fastening it onto my belt, as I can find no pocket, which will keep it perpendicular. Thanks very much. Wonder what he's talking about here. It is a thing I have been vaguely wanting to possess for many years. I am afraid it will be a long time before I can resume proper letter writing. Examining will hold me up until mid-August. Here we get a footnote. Let's see if he's explaining what this is that Lewis is talking about. Maybe not. Walter Hooper says, during Warnie's first tour of duty in China in 1927 to 1929, he thought of retiring from the Army. In a letter to Jack, C.S. Lewis, written December 5th, 1929, he said, I have had just about enough of the Army, which becomes more tedious with every year that passes. He calculated that by December 1932 he would be entitled to a pension of £200, and so he set his retirement for the end of 1932. In July 1932 he applied for retirement from the Royal Army Services Corps, and it was soon decided that he would sail for home on the 22nd of October. So we're getting close to the dream or the hope of the Lewis brothers getting to live together again for the very first time since their childhood. That's the end of our letter there, Robot Lady. I don't know. It's still a mystery to me what this philosophical instrument is that Lewis is talking about here. Any guesses on what it might be?
Yeah, it is a bit of a mystery, and Lewis never names it outright. It could be some kind of small scientific gadget, like a compass or a measuring tool, something he wanted to keep on him, maybe for writing or his philosophical reflections. Whatever it is, it seems really personal, like something he'd wanted for a long time, and now he's finally able to carry it with him. So yeah, it's kind of a neat, subtle detail.
All right, well, thanks, Robot Lady, for that. Actually, stand by for just a second. Well, you know what? I'm going to close out the episode, and then I can take care of what I need to take care of. So thanks for your help today, Robot Lady. Appreciate it, as always. Thanks to Nina Latte and Ron and everyone else who joined today on the live stream or checks us out on the replay for your time, your attention, your contributions. They are always wanted, welcome, and appreciated. To you and to everyone else within the sound of my voice, until next time when we continue our read on C.S. Lewis together, everyone, take care.
From books, tales of old, we dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts, we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands to Screwtape's rants, engaged with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance. Futuristic insight, we give it a chance. From Narnia's lands to Screwtape's rants, engaged with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique techno trance, futuristic insight, we give it a chance.